surprise and pleasant surprise of a podcast. Thank you, Sumira, for joining us. Me and Sujata have been doing this initiative for quite a while. We are used to a lot of miracles happening on the technological front, but this is the first when a guest calls us and says, "If you ever need me to come on the podcast, I'm willing." And it's a very great thing to have you because um, like our bit of chat we had before recording this, it's been an amazing journey for you. Sujata is into human resources for a while. Now she's also studying to be a counselor. We work together, me and Sumira, for your information, Sujata. We were together for at least, I think, six or 7 years. We worked together in an ad agency called JWT, um, which changed its name a couple of times. In fact, it went from HK
Yeah.
to JW Thompson to becoming JWT.
Right.
So we survived all of that. And
Yeah.
so today's topic that I've been pondering over, knowing the three of us and the uh, experiences we've had. We've at different times we've had to care for patients who had very difficult diseases. So my point of view was that the stories. One sec. Sorry. Uh, the stories of the patients and the remarkable journey they've had uh, is sometimes chronicled well enough. And since they are the protagonists of our stories, most of the time we are more concerned about taking care of them. The story that does not get told very often is the people who take care of them and their journey, because the smallest of things, for example, one of the things that we were chatting just before we started this podcast, Sujata, was the uh, lack of availability of medicines. When you have a long-term disease, you stock up for a while. But if the stock ends at a very random time, because you are not taking care of all the stock of medicines at the same time. So one odd medicine missing also sometimes means that you really have to go through a lot of trouble during the lockdown to figure out where will you get that particular medicine, because some of the medicines are not easily available. So my first question to you, Sumira, comes from a completely different place. Uh, the question is, do you think the universe has been targeting you because of this unique place that you are in, where things are so difficult? And I would want you to speak a bit about the journey from the beginning, when it first happened, a bit about how you managed to see it.
It's that is in all caretaker response. The first time is always why me, and this happened. This why me was in 2000 when my sister, society doesn't understand schizophrenia. So my sister, society and societal pressure, relatives said, वो ठीक हो जाएगी, उसको बस शादी करा दो, उसका शादी करा दो. So
Oh,
we had an arranged marriage for her, and that led to her most acute episode beyond two, like the Delhi hospital and the Bangalore hospital actually gave me a certificate saying she has to be institutionalized. She is not capable of functioning. And I came, luckily, Vicky, right? My friend from, I don't know if you know him. He was my friend from ONM. He had a sister who had schizophrenia, and he told me, try this one hospital is left for you, Masina, and this doctor called Dr. Sachin Patkar. Why don't you bring her to Bombay? And she was so violent. The husband in 1 month said, take her home. He was a doctor. He understood what she had, so said, take her back. On the way back, when she came home, she slashed, because she had voices, very violent voices. She almost killed my mother with a knife, like full. So
okay.
that night, I drove. My mama picked me up. I took a flight from Bombay, drove to Dehradun. My mother was living in Dehradun. First separated, he took my mother to hospital for all her injuries. And we sort of sedated her and brought her to Delhi first, etc. Then Delhi said after 9 months, sorry, we can't do anything. Bangalore, sorry, we can't do. Then I brought her in Messina, and this doctor said, you have to trust me, you have to leave her in this hospital for 1.5 years minimum. It might be more, and you have to trust me on electric shocks and medication and whatever if you want yourself. And so I mean, obviously the universe was helping out. I said yes. My mother said, I trust you, do whatever you want for your sister. So I got her blessings, and I just went with it. Was working full day every morning at 7, and every morning and evening at 7 I had to go visit her. And in the hospital, in the psychiatric ward, they have bars. It's like a prison. If you see it,
Oh,
you would not want anybody you love to be there. It's dormitory and it's a prison, and there are there is a common toilet, and everybody on that bed is totally, I mean, in really bad conditions. And it took me, I don't know how I did it, but just something made me say, okay, let's try this. And 1.5 years being in that hospital, she, with trying out medication, electric shocks, I must tell you, I lost a very good friend while my sister was in hospital, because I didn't ask that friend, but that friend, sorry to diverse, but it's an important thing, because in your life, how it changes. One friend came, a Parsi girl who was really nice and kind. My best school friend, who was my best friend for many, many years, she came on that day. My sister had electric shocks, and she was in that wheelchair with all those, things they put on the head, and she was frothing. And she came to see, I didn't even tell her to come. She came on her own. And after that, she had a breakdown. She had a complete nervous breakdown. And in her treatment, the doctor said, cut off your relationship with your friend and put all the blame on me. Your friend was responsible for it. Your friend made you come to see the sister, and that's how she got. And we don't talk anymore. And it's really how there are many people who leave you because when you're down and out. I remember our boss, I will not mention the boss, when I went to the boss and said, please don't put me on pitches on the weekend. I have a sister in a psychiatric ward. I need, that boss gave me extra work. I'll not name the name, but you're really pushed to the edge. But anyway, this 1.5 years, then she was well enough to go to a rehabilitation center in Delhi, where she spent another 1.5 years till she was in a situation stable enough that she would not harm my mother, and she could go back and live with my mother. By then my mother shifted to Delhi back, because she said, Dehradun, there is no medical, if something happens to my daughter, what will I do? So yeah, no medical. So she came back to Delhi. She hated Delhi, she hated cities, she loved out there, but she had to come back. And then my sister started living with her, and my mother was healthy. At 80, she could drive a car, her mental, everything was perfect. But he feels that, it is very draining. Caretakers are drained by looking after a acute schizophrenic patient in the house. It's very draining. And my mother did whatever she could. I promised her before she died. So it was a value also, so values that I brought up as a kid about, family and responsibilities and duties and parents, etc. That made me bring her home. And I must say, my husband was amazing. I mean, we all have our fights with our husband. A guy who is willing to take such a bad case in the beginning. It was really, and he also used to come for once a week to meet the doctor and find out why she was sick. So that was in 2000. She went back to my mother by 2005. And 2016, my mother passed away. So she's been with us for 4 years. And I decided, because I had more knowledge, I had read a lot about schizophrenia. My friends helped me, doctors I talked to. I decided that I would try, because she used to do nothing, Bunty, in my mother's house, but sleep. Nothing. She did nothing. She just ate, slept. And my mother, I couldn't push my mother to. And then my mother finally went home to Jaipur, where she came from. There were no psychiatrists. medicines used to be couriered every month to her, etc. I just kept her peaceful. But I decided in Bombay that if I could bring her to a situation where she can live, then I can at least improve her life. So I started looking for centers. I found Manav Foundation, where she goes in the morning, and they do group counseling, they do special counseling, they do dog therapy, music therapy, a whole lot. And there are lots of people like her. She feels at home. And then I have this really lovely friend, Nilüfer Parsi, very beautiful person, who said, listen, because the doctor said she needs to keep her mind occupied. So she goes 2 hours to her office. She has a real estate company where all she has to do, they give her a list of numbers and she has to call and say, would you like to visit this site? It's a beautiful site. They've given her something. So she gets a little bit of money, and she feels a little bit of empowerment and her own thing. So this was working well in the last 2 years, and then lockdown came. I was just threw off everything of hers. She lost her bearings. She had a structure, she had a system, she knew which days her therapy, she knew which days dog is coming, which day after. Everything was going clockwork. She used to be back home and she would be tired, she would watch TV, go to sleep, and life was peaceful. Just had become peaceful in the last 1.5 years, actually. And lockdown just threw up everything. She lost her bearings, she went into relapses, she went into voices, zoning out, all the symptoms of schizophrenia started coming back. And she started looking, when they feel paranoid, they start looking at you in a certain way, you recognize that look as they're feeling that they are not comfortable with you and they can do anything. At that time, they can be violent. It can lead to violence, if they start looking at you in a particular way, suspiciously, and that, paranoid way of who are you. And I didn't have any maids, nothing in lockdown. So I was cooking, cleaning, looking after my sister, keeping my husband and her as much apart as possible. My daughter is a great help. She has this very, she's very evolved, internally. She understands dynamics, and she would help, and we started getting therapy counselors in on call. Then we started asking the center started having therapy sessions on Zoom, which we set up. She just had one, 12 to 1 today.
Okay.
Then the doctors started giving me small changes in the medicine, made me monitor. Now see if her mood in the morning gets better with this, or does she feel suicide? She started feeling suicidal. Does she feel little less depressed? So tinkering, but monitoring every hour of those tinkerings has kept her like, because the doctor told me I have no beds. By the way, the doctor told me the most affected in COVID are not as much the COVID patients as the mental patients. And the most mentally ill people are the ones who used to go out. He said the ones who went out and had found a little bit of structure and had found a safe haven outside of their home, they are the ones who are most effective. And I called him first in May. I said, I can't manage, please help. Sumira, I don't have any beds. I'm so sorry. There are just no beds. Everywhere it's full. Mentally ill patients are going through hell. So I will help you and I will hold your hand and take you through the journey of the medicines. We can only trust medicines right now. You can't do anything beyond medicines. If it means you have to drug her, you have to drug her. So I said, okay, just anything that makes her not have a relapse. Because he had told me that the day she has a second relapse, as bad as she had in 2000, I cannot bring her back. He said, then I will not be able to bring her back. And he's the one who brought her back the first time. So he said, we have to avoid relapse at all this thing. So that's how it's been. It's been for as a caretaker, the why me comes back. The oh my God, what a burden! Why me, and why did this happen? Why my family, and why can't I just have a nice happy family like others? You realize then that every family has some issue, but then at that time it is that frustration, and slowly you start distancing yourself and start to, you have to heal yourself also. In the process as a caretaker, if you don't heal yourself, she's spewing at you, you're spewing back at her, and it's just a very toxic environment, and it does no one good. And in COVID, especially when you're fighting an external enemy, then you have an internal one to take care of. It's like two forces, and you're just in the middle and you just do. People tell you, oh, you're very brave and you do this. I said, it's nothing to do with courage or bravery. It's to do with you have no choice. You just get on with the job.